Hey guys, Marissa from the Neon Tea Party here. In today's lesson, I'm going to show you how to make this friendship bracelet pattern of interlocking X's and diamonds. This is a great intermediate pattern that you can still do just sort of from looking at your bracelet, and you don't necessarily need to reference a printed pattern. So I really like this pattern for our intermediate friendship bracelet classes. I definitely recommend that you check out our tutorial on chevron pattern first, just to get you so you kind of get to learn the forwards and the backwards knots a little bit more up close and personal, as well as how to set up your bracelet with the braid at the top. Basically, it's just a knot, braid, knot. The pattern is going to start with chevron rows. You can start with as many rows as you like. I usually like to start the pattern with one row of each color, just so you can kind of get a feel for the colors in your pattern. But you could start with one row, you could start with 2 rows, you could start with more than the number of colors that you have. Totally up to you. The materials that you'll need, just so you make sure you have everything, is you'll need Omega Krill yarn or embroidery floss. Here at the Neon Tea Party, we love Omega Krill. It's a fine Mexican acrylic yarn that knots up beautifully for friendship bracelets. You could see all my little friendship bracelets here are made with Omega Krill, but embroidery floss works just fine. You'll need either a safety pin or washi tape to hold down your bracelet. If you want to attach your friendship bracelet to fabric, just grab a safety pin. If you are holding it down on a hard surface, such as a table, you'll want the washi tape. And then you'll need a tape measure to measure out the length of your string, and a little scissor to cut your string, and that's pretty much it. All the supplies seen here are available at theneonteaparty.com/shop. We have a friendship bracelet kit that comes with all of these supplies together, as well as everything is available individually, so you could get whatever it is that you need. So to get started, you're going to want to cut 36 inches for each color of yarn, and you're going to want to have 2 strands of each color. Now, if you're using Omega Krill, you'll see that the Omega Krill comes in a 3-ply strand. So one strand is actually 3 skinny little strands, which are then treated as one. You can either work with a 3-ply strand, or you can double up for a 6-ply. I call this method thicker, quicker, and I like doing my tutorials, friendship bracelet tutorials, with the doubled up yarn, just because it's a little bit easier to see on camera. But as you can see with this sample here, this is done with the single 3-ply strand, which makes just a little bit of a finer pattern. This chevron that I had showing before, this is the thicker, quicker, so you could see the difference in thickness with the knots. So we're doing the thicker, quicker here, and as I mentioned, you're just going to want to start off your interlocking diamond and X pattern with some rows of chevron. So again, make sure you head over to our video on chevron pattern just to get yourself acquainted if you haven't already tried this pattern out. And as I also mentioned, you'll want to start your bracelet off by tying a knot at the very top, all your strands together, and then a 2-inch braid followed by another knot to keep that braid in place before starting your pattern. The reason for this is I always recommend braiding your yarn first before you get started. I love doing the braids at the end to be able to easily take on and off your bracelets so that you can wear them when you want, take them off when you don't need them, such as when you're sleeping, showering, working out, anything like that. It'll just keep your bracelets brighter longer. So you could see just how easy that was to take on and off. All right, so once you have your rows of chevron, like I said, you could do as many or as few as you want, totally up to you. It's time to start our X, and then below our X, we're going to create our diamond, and we're going to just switch off with making an X and then making a diamond. Haven't done this pattern in a while, so let's see how this goes. So here we have our bottom chevron, and this bottom chevron is going to actually be the top of our X. We could also do another, maybe we'll actually do a row of chevron first with this mint color, and then that's actually going to be the top of our X. So forget what I said. So we're going to do one chevron row here. So just to review chevron, we have our colors in laid out mirrored image order. And I always like to start on the left. We're doing forwards knots from the left to the center, and then backwards knots from the right to the center, and then we'll join the two outside colors together. Also, I should mention the colors here. I'm using mint, Mexican pink, lilac, burnt orange, and citrus. So these are all Omega Krill colors, which are all available in the Neon Tea Party shop. Okay, so forwards knot. So we're gonna do 2 forwards knots, or I guess it's just 1 forwards knot, but our friendship bracelet knots are always doubled. So it's the backwards 4 on top of the filler string, which here is the pink. Hold your pink tight and ride it up. So I just did 2 of those. Pink is done. Move on to the purple. We got our backwards 4 on top of the purple, behind and through, pull up, backwards 4 over the purple, behind and through, pull up, and we're just going to keep doing this until it gets to the center. Do this kind of quickly, and then around our citrus. Okay, now we're going to do on this side. First of all, I've just scooched over my mint to join this little grouping here, and we're going to start now on the left-hand side. Sorry, the right-hand side, and do backwards knots around these strands. So we're doing the backwards 4 on top of our first filler strand, behind, through the loop, and up. Let's make sure that's nice and straight up there. And one more, backwards 4 on top of the pink, behind, and through the loop. We're gonna pull up. All right, we're just going to keep going with that. Okay, 2 more. Go around the citrus. And we're going to tie mint around mint. Just make sure that's tight. Mint around mint with the backwards knot, the right strand over the left using the backwards knot. So once and then twice. Cool. Cool. So now this mint is going to be the top of our X. So we're actually going to bring these two to the middle, and we're going to ignore those for now. You can also, if you want, bring them up. I always find that bringing the strands up is a very clear indication to let them be. So what we're going to be doing now is we're going to basically be creating little sideways V's, and then once those little V's are done on the side, we'll bring the mint back in to finish out that X. So keep that mint up there. And again, we're gonna start on the left because that's just how I do. So you're gonna see, we're going to basically start the same way as a chevron, but then we're going to learn a forwards backwards knot to flip our pink string back to go the other way so that we get that sideways, I'll show you guys, that little sideways V situation. That's what we're creating right here. So the pink is going to do a chevron over the first two. So we got 2 forwards knots. 1, 2. We're going to do a forwards knot over the burnt orange. We got 1, 2. You know what? I feel like this mint is going to get confusing. We're just going to put you down there. You can see better this way. Okay, so we have forwards knots around purple, forwards knots around the burnt orange, and now we're going to do a forwards backwards knot to knot around the citrus, but instead of the pink landing to the right of the citrus, we want it to land back in the same exact position so that it can then turn around and go back the other way. So a forwards backwards knot is exactly what it sounds like. We're going to first do a forwards knot around the citrus. And now we're going to do a backwards knot. So one trick that I have for remembering which way is forwards and which way is backwards is the direction of the horizontal portion of the, whether it's a forwards 4 or a backwards 4. You could also think of it forwards 4 is forwards and backwards 4 is backwards, but a quick little visual cue that I like to look at is which direction is the horizontal strand pointing in, and that's the direction that the knot is going to travel to. So in this case, we've done our forwards knot, and now we're going to do our backwards knot. So I have my backwards knot set up here, backwards 4, behind and through. And so now you see that the pink ended up in the same exact position that it started in, which is awesome, but we have that little knot, 1, 2, 3 knots. Cool. So now we want to pause with our pink here. Before we can turn back around, we need to have a little knot that's going to snug into that sideways V. So we're going to do a forwards backwards knot with the purple around the burnt orange. So we have a forwards knot, purple over the burnt orange, and pull up, and now a backwards knot. So now we have a knot, and the purple ended up in the same exact position it started. So now that we have that, we're going to go back to our pink, and now the pink can tie with a backwards knot around the burnt orange and then the purple to create that little sideways V that we're doing. So we're going to do a backwards knot, 2 backwards knots around the burnt orange. And 2 backwards knots around the purple. Cool, so now you can see we have that little sideways V. Amazing. So I like to do both of my little sideways V's first before completing the X with the X color. So we're going to do the same but mirrored on the right. So we're going to start with the pink. We're going to do 2 backwards knots, 2 backwards knots, and then a backwards forwards knot to turn our pink around. So we have our backwards knots here. 1, 2. Okay, backwards. 1, 2. Cool. So now we're going to do our backwards forwards knot around the citrus. So we have our backwards knot, and then our forwards knot. Cool. So now we're going to do a backwards forwards knot with the purple around the burnt orange to fill in that little dot there. So we're going to do backwards knot, forwards knot, okay, purple knot is there. Purple went back, or lilac I should call it, went back to the same position. And now we're going to do the Mexican pink around these two guys with forwards knots, because it's now traveling in the forwards direction. So we got 1, 2 forwards knots, 1, 2 forwards knots. Awesome. So now we have our 2 little sideways V's, and it's time to finish off this mint X because the little sides are all filled in. So we're going to do one side at a time, starting on the left. So now we're going to take the mint and we're going to do backwards knots starting in the middle. So the mint is going to start by knotting around the citrus with backwards knots. 1, 2, and then we're just going to keep going with the backwards knots until the mint makes its way all the way to the outside. Ta-da! So you have a diagonal there. And now we're going to do the same thing on the right side, using forwards knots to travel in the forwards direction. So we're going to start with the mint around the citrus and using forwards knots. Got 1, 2, 1, 2, 1, 2, and 1, 2. Sweet. So we have our first X, yay! Cool. So once you have an X, it's time to create a diamond. So you can see here in the sample that the diamond is perfectly interlocking into that X. So you can also use this opportunity before you start the diamond if you want to add another chevron in there. You can really, change up this pattern however you like by adding chevrons wherever you like, or, you can add different amounts of chevrons to change up the colors every time. Don't want to give you too many options to confuse you, but once you get the hang of it, you'll see where you can add little chevrons in between the X's and the diamonds. But we're just going to do interlocking X's and diamonds, no chevrons in between, although the diamond itself is pretty much chevrons. So for the diamond, we're actually going to start in the middle, just like we did for the bottom of this X here. So we're going to start with the 2 strands in the center. We have our citruses, and I'm going to start by doing a forwards knot with the left citrus strand around the right. You can also flip it and do backwards with the right citrus around the left. Either way. So I'm just going to do 2 forwards knots to get started, and then because I like to always start on the left, I'm going to continue with this citrus strand going all the way to the outside. These are all backwards knots here. Cool. And then when you get to the mint, or to your last outside color here, we're going to do a backwards forwards knot. So we got our backwards and we've got our forwards. So the citrus ends up in the same place that it was the last time. And we are going to set these two aside, and we're going to do the same thing but mirrored on the right side. So we're going to take our citrus and we're going to do forwards knots until it gets to the last strand, our mint. Okay, so we're going to do a forwards and then backwards. Cool. So you can kind of start to see that diamond coming together. We're going to move these two off to the side, ignore them for now, and we're going to go back to the center to create our next diamond row. So I'm doing a forwards knot of the right, left around the right, and we're going to go forwards, and then forwards, backwards, okay, and then the same thing but mirrored on the right side, two forwards, and then forwards, backwards to bring it back. Cool, so we have that second row of our little diamond in there. Okay, and now we have two strands left here, so we're going to tie these around one another. Either way, backwards, forwards, or forwards, or sorry, two forwards or two backwards, either way. 1, 2. So now we have a little dot in the center, so cute. It matches the little side ones here. So this is really coming together to look quite lovely. So now we have the top of our diamond done. So, and our little center there. So now we're going to close up for the bottom of our diamond. So now that we have the purple, we want to finish the first interior diamond here, which is the burnt orange. So we're going to just take those all away. And it's a little mini chevron. So we're going to do 2 forwards knots, 1, 2, 2 backwards knots, 1, 2, and then I'm going to do a backwards knot, 1, 2. Cool, so we have our first diamond complete, and now we're going to do the same thing with the citrus. So I'm going to move the mint out of the way. And split this in 2. All right, so we're going to start on the left, and again, just doing a chevron. Forwards knots on the left. And backwards knots on the right. Okay, and now backwards knot with this citrus around its neighbor. 1, 2. If you ever find that your knot sort of flips after the fact, just give a very gentle tug. Don't pull too hard because sometimes the string will break. But I'm just adjusting that back down. All right, looks better. All right, we've got our first diamond. So we have our first X and our first diamond, and they're interlocking and they look beautiful. And we're just going to keep going with this pattern here. So we're going to start with the mint on the outside and continue on. So I'm going to speed this up so you guys can see how it comes together. So I just jumped ahead a little bit, and you'll see that the second mint X is complete underneath the first complete diamond here. And all you're going to keep doing is just alternating between that diamond and that X until your bracelet is your desired length. Whenever your bracelet is long enough, then you're just going to finish off your bracelet by tying another overhand knot right below the end of your pattern, braiding a 2-inch braid, and securing with another knot below that, and then you can trim your ends as long as you want. Here on this one we have, it's pretty short, so I'll cut it to be pretty short, and just so you can see once more what that pattern is going to look like. That's the result you're going to get. It's really, again, such a fun pattern to do once you've mastered chevrons and are ready to do something a little more intricate. So yeah, that's it for interlocking X's and diamonds. If you like this video and you're watching on YouTube, be sure to give it a thumbs up, leave a comment below, and subscribe to the Neon Tea Party YouTube channel. Thank you guys so much for tuning in. Be sure to check out our other DIY videos.